This is Join Us in France, episode 341. 341. Bonjour, I'm Annie Sargent, and Join Us in France is the podcast where we look around France so you can best enjoy France as a destination. We talk about French culture, history, gastronomy, and everything it takes to have a wonderful experience in France. Today, I bring you a conversation with Paulette Geragos about buying an apartment in Paris, and oh boy, did she get herself a sweet place. You will learn about what she had to go through and some brilliant tips for a better experience buying a place of your own in Paris or anywhere else in France for that matter. After the interview, I'll thank a couple of new patrons and I'll clarify a few details on how France will reopen to foreign travelers. But it'll be quick because I need to get this episode produced and then hop on a train to Paris where Elise, Patricia, and I have a very full week planned. If you like what we do here at Join Us in France, consider supporting us by visiting joinusinfrance.com/boutique to check out my books, tours, and services such as my itinerary review, where I help you craft the best vacation in France specifically for you. The best way to stay in touch with me and with the podcast is to sign up for the newsletter at joinusinfrance.com/newsletter. And this week, look for your Paris photo of the day, newsletter subscribers. Bonjour, Paulette, and welcome to Join Us in France.
Bonjour, Annie.
Very nice to talk to you today about buying an apartment or a property in France, which is something that you have done. Lucky you. I'm sure a lot of listeners are thinking, lucky woman.
Indeed, I'm blessed. Yes,
and you'll have to tell us all about it. So feel free to get into the nitty-gritty details of what was strange about it, what went well, what didn't go so well, what you wish you had known going into it. You know, all that good stuff. So to begin with, why did you choose Paris?
Well, goodness, I've wanted an apartment in Paris since I was a child. In junior high school, I went to Paris for the first time when I was in junior high, and of course, just loved it. I went with my French class, and I thought, gosh, when I'm a big girl, if I have the money, I'm going to buy an apartment here.
Wonderful.
It's just such a beautiful, beautiful city, and I thought, if I ever get the chance, I want to buy an apartment here. And I spent the summer before college in Paris and Brittany with relatives, and then also studied abroad my junior year in college. And so I feel as though I'm a bit of a Francophile.
Right.
But, I just am very, very lucky to have been able to do it.
Yeah. Okay. So it's not necessarily as an investment for you. It was more like a purchase of the heart or something like that.
Well, I obviously I wanted to buy a property that would appreciate in value. But if you're looking at an investment, a real estate investment, you want to see your return on your investment, 5%, 8%, 2%. And that's not the way I purchased this property. Just as an investment property, I was looking at this as a potential rental, as well as a vacation home for the family, but also as a property that would appreciate.
Right.
And so that's why I bought, obviously in Paris as opposed to out in the country.
Right. Right. Because properties appreciate in the country, but not as fast as in Paris, at least most of the time. I mean, that's just how it works most of the time.
True.
With the pandemic, it has turned out that some places in Paris have depreciated and places in the countries have gone up in value, but that's not normal time.
Right. They have done that, as well here, New York City, as opposed to Wyoming or Bozeman, Montana.
Right. Yeah.
You never know.
So did you do this by yourself because you could speak French, or how did you go about this?
I speak, gosh, my French was quite rusty when I started the process almost 10 years ago. But it's gotten quite a bit better, thankfully. But I did do it by myself. There are a lot of companies that can facilitate the purchase of a Paris apartment for a fee, but I did call some of them, and one in particular was very patronizing. And so I thought, gosh, I can do this by myself. And thankfully I did. And I not to disparage them, I just think I think you can do it by yourself. You just have to do a lot of legwork.
Right. So was this a French company, or was this an American company trying to help you?
These were, I was talking with a couple American companies that facilitate the buying process for Americans.
Right. And they probably try to scare you like, oh, you'll never make it. You'll be robbed blind,
exactly.
That sort of thing.
Right. I mean, if you're not afraid to do the legwork, and if you have the time to do it, it's something that you can do by yourself.
Right. Yeah, well, it's a little bit like some people are born to negotiate the price of a car. If you're terrified at the idea of negotiating the price of a car, you probably shouldn't try to negotiate the price of an apartment. So It just depends on the person, right? Some people.
Right. That's true.
Some people aren't ready for that.
But I was trying to buy this also as a rental, and I was lucky to find a management company in Paris that that's still managing the apartment during the pandemic, and sending a cleaning person over once a week to make sure everything is clean and well maintained. But they also were renting it to vacationers. It was a minimum 1 week rental, and it was a VIP service with turn down service and their own branded towels and such in the bathroom. But the current restrictions that the mayor has implemented has made it impossible for me to rent to vacation.
Tell us about that.
Well, she is a socialist mayor, and I like a lot of what she's done. But she's imposed these rent control restrictions, which are very, very they make them
rigid.
Make them absolutely impossible to rent. They were actually imposed to curb the Airbnb proliferation, I guess, of rentals in apartments, because companies were buying entire buildings and then just renting all the apartments as Airbnbs. And then oftentimes, you have young kids that would come in and out of town and wouldn't respect the neighborhood or the other neighbors. And I can imagine that would have been quite difficult to be a neighbor of an apartment that was renting to Airbnb vacationers. And of course, there's a homeless problem in Paris as in other large cities. So she implemented these restrictions. So I can't rent.
So restrictions as far as how many days per year you can rent, right? Is that what you mean?
How many days a year you can rent. If you have a commercial license for your apartment, you can rent the apartment.
Right.
But you can, and also she's implemented restrictions as to how much you can get per square meter if you wanted to rent your apartment. So I believe my apartment would only rent for, I think it would rent for less than $1,500 a month.
Right.
So it makes more sense for me to just keep it vacant, because it's beautifully furnished, and it makes no sense for me to rent it, because they could conceivably cause $1,500 worth of damage quite easily. Right.
And of course, in France, the rules for renting a furnished apartment are quite different than renting by the week or by the month. But it's a different track again. And that would that's what gives people the most flexibility. But it's not the same track as Airbnb or rental by the week. So it's different. Yeah, it's different. Yeah, that's a problem in a lot of big cities. Big cities and very popular cities like Paris, is mayors are trying to keep a lid on how many places are going to be rented out by the week.
Right.
Or even by the 2 days, the 3 days. I did an episode recently where I was recommending that people don't choose Airbnb unless they're staying more than 5 days, because there are unforeseen consequences to all these short-term rentals. Now, you mentioned homelessness. Obviously, if you don't get to rent your apartment, that's not going to solve the homelessness problem in Paris.
No.
There's no direct link there, but indirectly, I can see where she is. And also, Anne Hidalgo is from Barcelona, and Barcelona has no Airbnbs at all. As far as I know, it's not allowed at all over there.
I see.
Yeah. So, it's so I think the lesson for the listeners is, if you're buying solely because you would like to have an apartment rental in Paris, an Airbnb in Paris that you can rent out most of the year, you might need to reconsider, because that's not as easy as you might think.
Indeed. Right.
Yeah.
That's so true. And talk to your accountant and see if it makes sense.
Right.
Financial sense.
Right. Yeah, because it's one thing if you want the place for yourself, but if all you're doing is wanting a return on your investment, this is not really.
No, Paris is not good. Paris is not going to be the place to do it.
Yeah.
But it will appreciate. It will appreciate.
It will appreciate long term, but it's not going to be this year. You're not going to have a great return year after year.
No.
Yeah. So what kind of research did you do before you decided on this apartment? And how long have you had the apartment, by the way?
God, I've had it about 8 years.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. And I think you need to know, you need to know the city. I knew the city quite well. And so I knew where I wanted to buy. Mm-hmm. And I did a lot of research. I mean, I remember being quite cognizant of the metro lines, the regular metro and the RER lines as well. Right. I wanted to be in central Paris. Mm-hmm. And of course, I had a list, and just as everyone does, and then you need to compromise. So I wanted an elevator, which I didn't get. I wanted an Haussmannian Pierre de Taille building, mm-hmm. which I didn't get. Mine's older. Mm-hmm. And I wanted a view, which I did get. So okay. I was very, very lucky because I bought on the Ile de la Cité, and I have a view of the river. Uh-huh. Right across from Ile Saint-Louis, and I have a view of City Hall. And I wanted what they call in real estate in French a vue dégagée. So I wanted an unobstructed view. Yeah. I wanted to see something. I just didn't want to look into another apartment.
Right.
So that was really the main concern I had, was that it was close to transportation, which of course most of your apartments are going to be unless you're in the 16th. And I wanted to be in central Paris, and I definitely wanted a vue dégagée because oftentimes, as your listeners probably know, Paris can be quite cloudy and it rains often. And so I wanted an apartment in an upper floor with an unobstructed view of something that would be light, that would allow light in, right. I guess. So right. So oftentimes these apartments will have, a back window or back section on a courtyard. So I wanted to make sure that I had light from the back of the apartment as well as the front of the apartment. Right. If that makes sense.
Right. Through and through, like you have light from both ends. Yeah, one end only is not pleasant. I've been in apartments like that, and no, it's not good. Okay, and so
I didn't. I was going to say I did not get my elevator, but I thought if I've got this view, what difference does it make? But I'm on the quatrième étage, le troisième étage, so the fourth floor.
American, yeah.
For American.
Yeah.
But there's a woman who lives above me, and she must be in her 80s, and she goes up and down those stairs like a gazelle. And
yeah. When you're used to the stairs, it's okay. It's a problem when you have to carry stuff. Like if you have to remodel and you have to carry a bag of cement, it might be a problem.
Well, that was not me.
Right.
Yeah. The contractors did that. God bless them.
Right. But you might be dissuaded from carrying, 6 packs of water or sodas or whatever.
True.
Because
but, all of the department stores will deliver. So the BHV, which is right across the river from me, they deliver.
Right to your door?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, nice.
It's very nice.
Very nice.
I know. They've got a great system, let me tell you. But I have not had groceries delivered, obviously. But usually if I'm there, I have a girlfriend with me or somebody who'll, help me with the water. But I did want to be in a residential, kind of in a residential area as opposed to, more of a commercial area. And then there are 2 farmers markets that are nearby. So these are the kind of things that you might want to consider if you're buying. And then you have to think about, well, is the apartment going to need work? Of course, you're going to get a better price if it's a fixer. And then are you going to be able to deal with remodeling?
Right.
Right.
And
but there's also not as much negotiating room when you're purchasing an apartment in Paris. Everybody seems to know the price per square meter in every single arrondissement in Paris. It's surprising.
Yeah, it's published. I mean, this is something that the realtors write studies about. Even for the rest of France, you can find out the average price for every zip code and since an arrondissement is essentially a zip code, you can,
right.
Yeah, you can find out. And of course, it'll go up depending on whether there's an elevator, a view, where exactly in the arrondissement it is. It'll go up or down, but above a pub, it's probably going to go down a little bit,
Right. Next to a nightclub, going to go down.
Yeah.
But when you're negotiating, there's probably not very much negotiating room because they've priced all that into the price.
Right.
And if it's a good apartment, it's going to sell, and it's going to sell fast.
Right. Yes, I'm shocked how fast things sell, even in my little village near Toulouse. You see, for any kind of place that I would consider buying, the sign is up, and 10 days later it's gone. It's
gone.
Yeah, gone. You really can't sit on your offer very long at all. So,
no, but you really do have to get your ducks in a row. So you need to do your research, see a few apartments. But when you're going into a realtor's office, a real estate agent's office, you need to dress well and act seriously.
Right.
I act as though you really do want to buy an apartment because they have looky-loos come through all the time.
Right.
And they're busy professionals. They don't have time. They want to work with somebody who's serious.
Yeah.
And then they don't have. The other thing that I thought was very interesting is that they don't have. Very few of them have exclusive listings. So
right.
When you find an arrondissement that you like or an area of Paris that you like, all of the listings sort of in the area on their window. And so then you walk down the street and there'll be the same apartments in that window as well.
Right.
So they don't have exclusive listings as we do here.
Right.
And so it's sort of more of a free for all, I guess.
Yes. And also what happens is that probably the owner is trying to also sell it by owner and will list it at different prices everywhere.
Maybe.
Right.
I did not experience that, but there's also that website particulier. So, sale by owner.
Yeah, it's for sale by owner. Yeah, particulier is a very good website to get the feel for things. There are others, Le Bon Coin is also another good one to look at.
Right. And I think it's important once you find a couple of realtors that you like working with, make up a follow-up appointment, send them emails, tell them about yourself so that they know that you are a serious buyer.
Right. Yes, because like you said, there are a lot of looky-loos. There are people who are just interested in looking, to them it's entertaining to look at apartments and houses, and especially in Paris. It's got to be it has to get old fast. All these people who pretend they want to buy a place when they just want to look.
Right.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah.
But when you're purchasing an apartment, the commission's already listed on the sale price.
Right.
But it doesn't include the notaire fee, which is almost 20%, and the VAT tax, which is, I don't even know what that is. Maybe another 20.
On a house? Do you pay VAT tax on a house? I don't remember.
I had to pay VAT tax.
You did? Okay. It's been so long, I forgot. But you definitely have to pay for your notaire, and that's a lot of money. And because it's almost 20%, that's why French people never refinance. It's extremely rare to refinance, because every time you'd refinance, you'd have to pay for that notaire kind of tax. And the notaire doesn't keep all that money for himself. It goes to taxes. It's a tax.
Right.
So the only time when French people sell is because they're really moving. They have to move because of work or because they're getting a divorce. These are or the person has passed away.
Oh no.
Yeah, that's how it works. You don't.
Right. My sellers were moving to their house in where are they going?
Somewhere out in the country.
In the country.
Yeah.
Gosh. You forgot that. No, where is the where does the Aga Khan live?
Who?
Annie, you know where the horse races are?
The horse races, there's a bunch of horse races. I don't know anything about horses.
Chantilly. That's where
Chantilly. Yes. Oh, yes, I've heard of that one. Yes.
Right. So they moved to Chantilly.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. Anyway, and so how did you how did you find this apartment? It's a realtor that introduced you?
Right. I found through my realtor, and because my realtor had a relationship with the realtor who represented the seller, who was retiring and moving to Chantilly. And so that's how I got the apartment. They had just reduced it. Just reduced it. And I jumped on it.
So did you originally saw it in a window, or?
I had originally seen it in a magazine.
Okay.
Actually, I did not see it in a window.
Okay.
And, but I had seen, oh gosh, I probably saw the inside of 6 apartments before this one.
Mm-hmm. But this one, you knew right away that you wanted to make an offer.
I knew right away.
So what was the process like to make the offer?
It's not it's not as formal. At least my offer was not as formal as it would have been if I was purchasing a property in the United States. It was written on a napkin.
Literally a napkin.
It was on a napkin. We were at a cafe and I said, "Let's do it." And so she I guess wrote the contract in French, whatever. I signed it and with the sales price and with my offer price, and that was it.
Was the realtor there with you, or was it just you and the seller?
My realtor was my realtor was there with me, and she presented it to the other realtor that afternoon
on a napkin.
And on a napkin, a lovely cocktail napkin. I know. Maybe I think it's probably quite unusual, but it worked.
That's not how it worked when we bought our house.
God, yeah, it was funny, but she put me in touch with the notaire that she'd worked with before, who was very, very good. He had he arranged to have a translator for me at every step of the way. But the notaire is sort of like your escrow company and your title company and your home inspector, sort of all rolled into one.
Yeah, home inspector not so much, because they don't actually look at the property, do they? I mean,
no, but they have the seller.
Oh, the stuff with
the seller has to guarantee
the energy kind of study.
Right. So I did walk through with a contractor and with my architect and looked at it, but they don't have termite inspections. They don't have They don't have home inspections, but what they do suggest doing is measuring the property.
Right.
Because you are buying by the square meter. Yes,
you have to measure it. Yeah, it's worth buying one of these little. I don't know what they're called, but it's a little machine that with a beam of light.
Yes.
And it measures very quickly, and you can just jot it down and do the math and make sure that they, if they're representing that the apartment is 100 square meters, that it is actually 100 square meters and not 98, because
exactly
that's a chunk of money.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Because when I was remodeling, there was probably half a meter that's hidden behind a wall. And the architect said, now you make sure that, that you let, if you ever sell this apartment, to let them know that there's a half meter back here.
Wow. Yeah. It's interesting. Yeah. Because otherwise they won't count it. Yeah.
No, it's true.
So
That's true.
The things that they have to do is they have to measure and let you know how efficient your place is as far as energy consumption.
That's true.
Right. That's
energy
mandatory.
consumption is a big deal over there when you're buying an appliance or any telephone, whatever. Everything is
rated.
Decibel level too. If you're buying a new washer dryer, they'll tell you the decibel level.
Yeah, which is it's good, right? I mean,
right. Well, you don't want to disturb your neighbors, and it's important.
Yeah. All right. So you found your own notaire, or was this someone that your seller was suggesting? Did you have the same notaire as your seller?
This notaire was suggested by my agent.
Okay.
She had worked with him before, and there was no objection by the seller, so we went with them. Right. And they were very, very good, as I said.
Yeah. In France, it is normal for people to have a different notaire. You could, the buyer and the seller can have a different notaire, and then the notaire will figure it out between the two of them. But you could also agree, if you want things to go quickly, it's better if you agree on a notaire. Most French families have a family notaire that has been doing stuff for them for years. But in my case, we had a family notaire, but he's just not located in an area that was easy to get. You can't park where he is. So it annoyed me. And I was like, I'm finding another notaire. And we just so happened to have a young notaire who's a friend of the family. And so I'm like, I'm going with her because, it'll be easier. But you can pick your notaire. You don't have to go with whoever.
Yes, that makes sense.
And they represent you. It is legal representation.
Right. It's interesting because when you're walking in the city, for people who've been to Paris or to France, those notaires are designated by the gold medallion outside of their office.
Yes.
So if you're walking down the street, that's a sign of a notaire. Right.
And they all charge the same amount. It's set by law. Also, if you need advice, they will not, you can make an appointment to go talk to a notaire, and they're not going to bill you for the half hour or whatever they spend with you. They get paid when you purchase. That's how it works. A notaire typically, in our case, we had some questions. We went to meet her before, and we had lots of back and forth conversations over the phone and over email. And we didn't get billed for any of that. This is normal. This is doing business. So long as you finish the process and you buy through them, then they'll get paid at that time. That's normal. And like you said, they record the deed. They do all of that stuff, all the legal stuff at the same time, which is handy.
Right. They check to make sure that there's proper title.
Right.
They make sure that if there's a loan on the property, that loan's been forgiven.
Right. Let's talk about money. Did you try to secure a loan, or did you?
I did. Okay. I did get a loan, and that was very difficult. I knew that the rates were quite low, and I originally went through a loan broker. That didn't work. Nobody wanted to talk to me. Gosh, I went through maybe one other company, and then one of my girlfriends here in the U.S. who'd bought a small home in the country in France put me in touch with her loan agent at Crédit Agricole. So that's how I got my loan, and they were very, very, very easy to work with and happy to fund. And I got a 15-year loan at a very, very good rate, much better than I could have gotten here in the U.S. But if you do get a loan, you also have to get life insurance.
Yes.
And that includes an EKG with a doctor.
Yes.
A doctor in France. If you do it here in the U.S., it has to be notarized. But it includes, blood tests and
right.
I'm
Yes,
sure there was a questionnaire that I had to write out. But then when you are so every month your loan amount plus that life insurance amount,
right,
premium is deducted every month from your
right.
From your
and in our case, the monthly insurance amount was about 50 euros. So we just looked at it recently, which is why I knew. And what happens as well is that this insurance is actually reimbursement insurance. So that means that if you have a loan and say the house is in the name of a husband and wife and they have children, the husband dies in a terrible accident, the loan is paid back.
It's forgiven, yeah.
It's forgiven. Or at least that part of the loan that belonged to the husband. So they usually insure the spouses separately. So typically they're going to put 50% on the husband, 50% on the wife. But if the husband makes a lot more than the wife, it could be 80%, 20%. It could be, you decide that when you take the loan. And if it's just the one spouse who works, that person could carry 100% of the insurance. Am I making sense?
Yes, no, that makes sense.
Right. But then they want to make sure that person is fairly healthy. So they make you go through all of these things. Right.
Yeah, they said they have no interest in trying to repossess property.
No, they don't. So I've never known anybody who's been repossessed, ever. So the loan is repaid by the insurance, but of course you have to pay for the insurance, and that's a portion of the amount that you've borrowed, obviously.
Exactly.
And if you happen to have a chronic illness of any sort, then you can.
Good luck.
You can still get insurance, but it has to be a special insurance. Like the Association of Diabetics and the Association of Cancer Patients and etc. They provide insurance for purchase. So it's possible, but you have to know about this.
I see.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Learn something new every day.
So if you have
the other thing I wanted to mention, Annie, that I forgot to mention is that, so when you're buying an apartment, it's sort of like buying a condo, I guess, in the U.S., but you're not buying necessarily your airspace. You're buying sort of a percentage of the building and your apartment.
Yes.
But they don't have HOA dues, as they do in the U.S. So they don't seem to have, most condominium complexes in the U.S., they will have, your homeowners association dues, which oftentimes can be quite substantial. And then those are invested and they're put in a bank account in case,
remodels,
you do excessive maintenance on the building. But in France or in Paris, what I noticed is that they don't have those large reserves. Or they do, but not to the extent that we do. And your homeowners association fees are quite low.
Okay.
And so
that depends also.
And so what they do is if there's maintenance on the building, they vote at the copropriétaire meeting, which is usually once a year, or if there's a special meeting that can be called as well. But the board meeting is once a year for the entire, for the residences, for the residents, or owners rather. And then any maintenance is voted on at that time. So
your residence doesn't have a syndic?
We do have a syndic. So I'm sorry, I should have mentioned. Yes. So the syndic, so there's a management company that manages the building.
Right.
And then the copropriétaire meeting is once a year. And then if there are maintenance issues, they're voted at that time.
Okay, so I've never paid condo fees in the US, so I have no idea how high they are. But I know that my dad and my sister, who've both had apartments, they paid around 300 euros a month for the syndic. Does that seem really low to you?
No, that sounds well, it's higher than what I pay, but
okay.
But that sounds.
So I think it depends on the size of the building, because
I'm sure
when you end up,
our building is quite small,
right? When you end up with a lot of homeowners, the risk increases, and so they include money for basic maintenance, and also you typically pay your water, your heating, and your sewer in your syndic bills when you're in an apartment. Is that how it works for you?
We pay the heating separately, I believe, but
okay.
the water, insurance,
right. So that's
and trash,
right,
and as well as the maintenance of the building,
right. And then they call for special funds if they have to redo the facade, redo the elevator, if they have to repaint, whatever.
And the facade is voted on when you're redoing the facade. The city tells you when that needs to be done.
In Paris, yes.
It's sort of on a rotating basis.
Yes. In Paris, you don't really get a choice. In other places,
they tell you and you do it.
Right. That depends on the city. But the big costs are typically the elevator, the facades, the paint. You know, if somebody breaks the door, which is going to happen 100 times, that's small potatoes. But the other thing that happens all the time is people try and shove something that's too big. They have conduits for the garbage bags to go down to the ground level, right? And,
right. The trash chute.
Yeah, the trash chutes. Those were forever getting plugged up in my father's apartment, because you always had some idiot that was trying to put down something that was too big, you know. So but that's the small potatoes. When it gets interesting.
The other thing you should consider, of course, is the maintenance of the building. I got a very good price on my apartment because the building needed some
repairs.
Maintenance.
Right.
Pardon me. So there was some deferred maintenance, and I knew that I was obviously going to have to pay for it at some point. So
right.
That's another reason why I got why I got a good price.
And that is why in some buildings in Paris, I've seen this. You walk into a building in Paris and you notice they have like fuse boxes, like the really old style fuse boxes with the little glass things with a wire running through it. Like fuses, like, 50 years ago. And that's because there's an electrical counter for just the mains for the building, and nobody wants to fix up the electricity.
Nobody wants to upgrade it. Oh, gee.
Right. Just for the stairs, right? This is just the counter that runs the stairs. And it's a mess. I mean, you can get into so many fights with people.
Well, that's just very short-sighted, I would think.
Yes, it is.
I have to say, I mean, when I purchased my apartment and the contractor was going through, I realized that the electrical wasn't even grounded. Right. And it had been redone in 88, remodeled in 1988. So it wasn't even grounded then. So obviously you had to bring it up to code.
Right.
Yeah.
And also the rule in France is that if you do a certain amount of improvements on your property, then everything else has to be redone. So you have people who say, I can only spend this much on the paint because if I repaint the whole thing, budget. I also have to do the electricity or the this or that. Okay. But of course, people get around that all the time because they just hire somebody who's going to not worry about it. You can find an electrician who will fix your things without putting a ground in. It's easy.
I won't say anything.
Right. So was there a horror story at some point? Like, did your hair turn all white over this whole ordeal or
no,
was it okay?
Not at all. It went really, I think, quite quite well considering. I mean, I went back and forth about every month. I had an architect who helped me with the remodel, who was referred to me by the seller. Oh, the other thing I wanted to tell you is that the seller left me all of their china, all their crystal, all of their sterling,
Wow.
all their paintings and prints because they didn't need them. So,
oh, wow.
boy, was I lucky. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was really, really lucky. But anyway, yeah, no, the architect was great. I got 3 bids on the apartment. I took the lowest, which I shouldn't have done. I should have taken the middle bid. But you know, I think all in all, I think it went okay. The one thing I thought was frustrating is that I would show up, you know, maybe at around 11 o'clock and then nobody was working. They were just kind of hanging out. And I asked the architect, well, why aren't they working? And she said, well, it's almost lunch. And I said, but it's 11. Jesus. It's 11 o'clock. Lunch is at 12:30. And she said, well, they're getting ready. They're getting ready for lunch.
Well, they're thinking about it.
Oh, man. Then, of course, they don't come back till 2 or, 1:30 if you're lucky. And then they leave at, around 5. Yeah. So
things didn't go as fast as you had hoped.
No, but everyone was really, really nice. The one thing that really bothered me was the paint. I couldn't find a decent painter to save my life. But then I went to a party at a very well-known interior designer's apartment, and his paint wasn't done properly either. And so I thought, well, gosh, if he can't find a good painter, then I should just calm down.
You know that paints, because I owned a house in the US and I bought my own paint and repainted just a few walls. I didn't do the whole house, but I repainted just a few walls myself. And when we got to our house in France, I repainted a few walls as well. And the quality of paint is very different between Europe and the US. In the US, I could get really good glossy paint that stretched just right and didn't drip at all. In France, you can't buy that because those paints use the chemicals that are not allowed
because
in the EU
restrictions.
Yes. And so it's a lot harder to get a beautiful paint job in France than it is in the US.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Well,
and it's even worse in Spain.
I didn't know because it was because I bought I used Faro and Ball paint because I'm familiar with it, and I know it's really good paint, and so I thought, why they sell it at the BHV, so that's how we bought it. But
it's
that's
not the same.
Interesting. I didn't know that, but
it's not the same compounds inside. Yeah, it's not the same. So you had the architect manage your remodel job.
Yes, and of course you have to pay the 20% tax on whatever the contractor does, 20% on the architect's fee. So it gets to be very, very expensive, and so one would need to add that to their budget.
Yeah. Yes. Remodeling is not cheap in France. It's cheaper in the US from what I experienced, and it's much cheaper in Spain. In Spain,
I can imagine.
You can get work done for. Sometimes Sometimes I tried to do things myself, and because I thought, oh, that's going to be too expensive. And then I gave up after a while because I couldn't get it right. And I called the plumber anyway. And the plumber asked me for so little money. I was like, what? How is that even possible? Like a French plumber wouldn't even come out for that kind of money. They wouldn't even look at it. And in Spain, it's done for that amount of money. It's really impressive, the differences in... Yeah. So overall, it was a good experience. You're happy you did it. And now you just want to come back to Paris, right?
I do. I'm just desperate to come back. I'm so excited. In fact, maybe I'll do another Camino walk.
You've done a Camino too.
I did the Chemin Le Puy in 2014.
Nice.
And that was wonderful. But I did it in June. It rained the entire month.
Yeah. I think this year we're getting more rain in May than we did in April, which doesn't make any sense.
Well, hopefully you won't get any in September, because that's when I'd like to come out. That's when I'd like to come out. I have a girlfriend who has who purchased a fractional interest in an apartment in the Marais. And so she's going to be coming in September. And so that's my goal.
That's nice.
I'm vaccinated, ready to come.
And so next time, how long will you stay when you come back?
I'll come the whole month.
Oh, a whole month. That's nice. Very nice. Well, Paulette, thank you so much for talking to me. This was very interesting. I must admit, I would be very intimidated, even as a French person, to buy an apartment in Paris, because the prices are pretty high compared to where I live anyway. And
well, I got lucky. I really, really did.
Yeah. Yeah. And it does depend on who you talk to, and you have to be patient and find the right place. How long did you look before you found this place?
Oh, gosh. I looked probably 4 years before actually went. I just looked online.
Yeah.
Just to familiarize myself with prices in different areas and what I was going to, just kind of what I would expect. And sometimes you go into an apartment. I remember one apartment that I didn't end up buying. It was beautiful, beautiful. Tall ceilings and Haussmann Pierre type building, but it had the strangest floor plan. It was 3 rooms that are connected, which is sort of typical, and a bathroom off to one side, and then a kitchen that was hidden somewhere. And I thought, gosh, I can't bring my parents here. They're not gonna get it. So I wanted an apartment that had, a logical floor plan. Right. So I looked for 4 months, and oftentimes I'll show you the floor plan on the listing. Yeah. So that's helpful. Yeah. But I looked for 4 months online, and then, kind of made my first trip out, and then started looking seriously. But then you have to be cognizant of your wire transfers, because if you do get a loan, you have to, either wire every month or make, wire once a year or so. Or when you're making your first wire transfer, or your wire transfer to close your escrow, or the equivalent of what you would call escrow in France, you have to be, there are going to be fees that are involved for every wire transfer as well. Right.
Yeah, and it's true that Haussmann buildings often did not have bathrooms, and so they often bought, the floor plans are sometimes weird because they had just tiny rooms, and then they bought a little space here and a little space there, and they added this and they added that, and so it looks hodgepodge.
Yes, very. Yeah. Very.
It's easier with newer apartments.
True. But of course, mine's a much older apartment. And again, I think because it was redone in the 80s, they wanted it to look more like a home with a normal floor plan.
Yeah. Very good.
So, anyway, but thank you, Annie, for inviting me on the show. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for coming on the show.
It's an honor to finally talk to you.
Yes, it's lovely to talk to you. And who knows, one of these days, wave at me when I'm walking by.
Okay, that'd be great.
Merci beaucoup, Paulette.
Bon, merci.
Au revoir.
Au revoir.
Again, I want to thank my patrons for supporting the show and giving back. Patrons get several exclusive rewards for doing so. You can see them at patreon.com/join us. Patreon, join us, no spaces or dashes. Thank you all for supporting the show. Some of you have been doing it for a long time. You are wonderful. And a shout out this week to new patrons, Hannah Shannon and Linda Monaghan. Thank you so much for becoming patrons and making this podcast possible. Another way to support this podcast is to hire me to be your itinerary consultant. You're keeping me very busy. So I love to advise you on the best way to go about visiting France and specifically meet your particular needs. Read about how that works at joinusinfrance.com/boutique. I'm recording this on June 8th, 2020. So tomorrow, French borders will reopen to foreign visitors. Let me tell you right now that it's probably not going to go smoothly because there are so many people involved along the line of getting you from A to B when you travel. We shall see if they are all singing from the same sheet music. For up-to-date information, Americans should look to the French Embassy in the US. It's an account that's very active on both Facebook and Twitter. Most countries have a French embassy. Look there for the latest and most accurate information. Because it's one thing to ask a bunch of people on Facebook, but they don't know near as well as the embassy does, okay? To simplify things greatly, right now, it's not very hard coming to France if you're vaccinated and you can prove it and you've had a negative PCR test in the last 72 hours. Not everybody is required to have the PCR test, but lots of people are. It depends if your country is green or orange or red. Okay, so refer to last week's episode for more on that. If you are not vaccinated yet, you're going to have to jump through many more hoops. I understand that vaccines are impossible to get in many countries still, but if you're lucky enough to be in a country where vaccines are available, get started on your shots ASAP. It will make travel much easier for you. Then there's the question of how do you prove that you've been vaccinated? I assume it's going to be easy for people coming from Canada, the UK, Australia, New Zealand, just to name a few English-speaking countries, because they all have national health system, and that system has been keeping track of vaccinations as it has been in France with the Amélie and the Tous Anti-COVID app. For the US, there is no national health system, and I don't know what's going to be accepted as valid proof. See, lots of Americans are going to start flying to France in the next few days. I'll talk to as many of them as possible, and I will report when I know more. But it's safe to say that if you give it time, it'll get easier. Now, is it safe to come to France? But, that's for you to decide. Right now, all indicators are that the pandemic is not spreading as much and we're heading in the right direction. But it's not like we have zero COVID here in France. More and more French people are getting vaccinated. All people over 12 are eligible. Getting an appointment is not anywhere as hard as it used to be. So, we're lucky in many ways. We're catching up with the US, but it's going to take some time. Masks are mandatory everywhere. You will need to reserve every museum and restaurant. You might have to prove that you've been vaccinated every time you enter a closed space. Indoor dining resumes tomorrow as well. Today on the radio, I heard Anne Hidalgo, the mayor of Paris, make a joke that she was looking forward to flashing her COVID vaccination certificate and enter a restaurant to eat indoors. So for sure that it's going to be asked of you. So you can come, but there will be, requirements and constraints and unpleasantness due to this pandemic. These things are not going to stop me from going back to Paris tomorrow, and I'll do it with great joy. So I got to get my bag packed and decide what I'm going to wear because it's going to be hot. And the question when it's hot is, do I take capris or do I take long pants? And do I take sandals or do I take closed shoes? See the things I'm thinking about today? And I talked to Elise earlier briefly, and that's also what she was wondering about. So these are good questions to ask yourself, aren't they? It's a good sign. We're traveling again. It's great. And by the way, and this is kind of a side thing, but it irks me a little bit. While Europe is opening up to Americans, Europeans cannot visit the US right now. This is even true for French people who live in the US, have a green card, so they are legally in the US. They have not been able to come visit family in France for 15 months. And right now they can leave the US on their French passport, but they probably wouldn't be allowed back to wherever they live in the US. So I really look forward to all of that being reciprocal and being sorted out. I think it won't take too long, but it's a lot of things are still in flux. Show notes for this episode are on joinusinfrance.com/341, where you will also see Paulette's guest notes, and you'll see there a recap of what we've discussed, as well as links to relevant resources. And if you enjoy the show, please introduce a friend to the podcast and show them how to listen. Next week on the podcast, I want to tell you about something I bet you have never heard about. It's that time long ago when the capital of France was in Brazzaville in the Congo. What a strange topic, you say. Well, I think that white folks, like me, need to stop ignoring the accomplishments of Black people, and the anniversary of the Appel de Brazzaville is coming up, so I wanted to acknowledge it. And I will also update you at some length about the new normal in Paris. Send questions or feedback to Annie@joinusinfrance.com. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you join me next time so we can look around France together. Au revoir. The Join Us in France travel podcast is written, hosted, and produced by Annie Sargent and copyright 2021 by Addicted to France. It is released under a Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives license.